Hey everybody, and welcome back. In today's fantastic video, I am here to teach you how can you create a nice tooltip button. Basically, a tooltip button is a button that when you hover on it, it shows a piece of text for explanation. Here we have a button with the text hover me, and when I hover it, it shows a tooltip to the top side. It's animated. When I hover, the button's background color changes, and also the tooltip appears with a nice smooth animation which shows this text. And also you can see a small flash-like item that shows this tooltip belongs to this button. Okay, let's see, how can we create this one today? But before starting, please like this video to motivate me. Let's dive in. So we start with the HTML structure for our tooltip button. First, we have the body element. Inside the body, we place a single wrapper that will hold everything together. This container exists so we can position the tooltip relative to the button. Within that container, we first add a button. The text inside the button simply tells the user to hover over it. Right after the button, we add another element that will act as the tooltip itself. This element contains the message that will appear when the user hovers. At this stage, nothing special is happening visually. We are only setting up the structure. The important idea here is that the tooltip lives inside the same container as the button. That relationship is what will allow us to reveal and hide the tooltip later using hover behavior. All right, everybody. Now that the HTML is done, I think we move into the CSS and start with the body styling. The background is set to a very dark gray value to give us a modern look. The height is set to 100 viewport height, so everything fills the screen vertically. Next, we use Flexbox. Display is set to flex, justify content is centered, and align items is centered. This places our tooltip container perfectly in the middle of the screen, both horizontally and vertically. We also set the font family to Inter to keep the typography clean and modern. Finally, margin is set to 0, so there is no default spacing around the page. After that, we style the tooltip container itself. The key property here is position relative. This is extremely important because the tooltip inside this container will be positioned absolutely, and this relative positioning gives it a reference point. Without this step, the tooltip would not align correctly with the button. All right, everybody. Now we focus on the tooltip itself. The tooltip is positioned absolutely so it can float above the button. We push it above the button using bottom set to 120%. Then we center it horizontally by setting left to 50% and using a translate on the x-axis to pull it back into perfect alignment. The background uses a semi-transparent white value, which gives us that glass-like appearance. The text color is set to white so it stays readable. Padding is added to give the content breathing room, and the border radius softens the edges. A subtle border with transparency helps define the shape. To enhance the glassmorphic effect, we apply a backdrop blur. The font size is slightly reduced for tooltip text. A combination of outer and inner box shadows adds depth and a three-dimensional feel. White space is set to no wrap, so the text stays on one line. Initially, the tooltip is hidden using visibility hidden and opacity 0. Transitions are added for opacity and transform, so the animation feels smooth when it appears. All right, everybody. Next, we create the small arrow that points from the tooltip down toward the button. This is done using a pseudo element that sits after the tooltip content. The content is empty and the position is absolute, so it can be placed precisely. We move this arrow to the bottom of the tooltip by placing it at the top edge of the next area. Horizontally, it is centered using left at 50% and another horizontal translate. The arrow itself is built using borders. The border width creates the triangle shape, and the border style is solid. Only the top border is visible while the others are transparent, which gives us that arrow effect. To add depth, we apply a subtle drop shadow filter. This makes the arrow feel connected to the tooltip and not flat against the background. At this point, the tooltip still remains hidden, but visually it is fully designed and ready for interaction. All right, everybody. Now we bring the interaction to life using hover states. When the user hovers over the tooltip container, the tooltip becomes visible. Visibility changes to visible and opacity moves to 1 so it fades in smoothly. At the same time, we adjust the transform so the tooltip slides slightly upward, adding a polished motion effect. We also update the arrow during hover. The border color becomes a bit brighter, which subtly reinforces the active state and makes the tooltip feel more responsive. Finally, we style the button itself. Padding is added to make it comfortable to click. The text color is white, the font size is increased slightly, and the text is transformed to uppercase. The background uses a semi-transparent look with a matching border and rounded corners. A backdrop blur keeps the glass effect consistent. The cursor is set to pointer, and transitions are added for background and transform. On hover, the button background switches to a diagonal gradient, it lifts upward slightly, and a glowing box shadow appears. This completes the experience, giving us a centered glass-morphic button with a smooth animated tooltip that feels modern and interactive. All right, everybody, to wrap this up, we now have a complete tooltip built using structure, positioning, visual effects, and smooth transitions. The container controls the interaction, the tooltip handles the display, and the button provides feedback through motion and color. This is a clean example of how HTML and CSS work together to create interactive UI elements without any JavaScript. So that's it for this tutorial video, and I hope you enjoyed the video, but if you want to learn, you must practice creating it. So see you in the next video, and don't forget to like. Have fun.